There are a few things I know to be true. There's a time to talk on the phone until 3:27 a.m., and there's a time to watch the lunar eclipse alone. There's a time for climbing tall trees and a time for petting fluffy cats, even when you're allergic. There's a time for picking blackberries on the shore of a river in a city you don't love, and a time for eating blueberry muffins with your mom. There's a time to cry at weddings of two lovebirds you barely know, and a time to cry at the funeral of a friend you knew too well. There's a time for summiting mountains, and a time for standing in the ocean just to be reminded that you are small and that our God is big. There's a time for sleeping on gravel, in a tent, with friends you deeply love, and a time for walking in the rain with your brother because your car broke down. There's a time for side-splitting laughter, and a time for excruciating pain. There's a time for bad jokes, and a time for sad poetry. There's a time for leaving and a time for staying, a time for dreaming and a time for doing. There's a time for lighting a fire and a time for putting one out. There's a time for falling in love and a time for stargazing alone. There's a time to read the stories you've always wanted to live and a time to live the stories you've always wanted to tell. And I'm thankful that the sky is always new because there's a time for the sun to rise and a time for the sun to set. There are a few things I know to be true. We decide whether time is a prison or a gift. I say these things because I know we are futile and this life is meant to be spent.